Canada is backing down on its controversial digital services tax, a move Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne says clears the way for trade talks with the United States to resume. Just days earlier, Mr. Trump had abruptly ended all trade discussions, demanding Canada scrap the tax on tech giants before any talks could move forward.
So Canada put a charge on some of our companies, and Canada's been a very difficult country to deal with over the years. We hear Canada, we have a great relationship with the people of Canada, but it's been very difficult. And they put a charge, and they were a little bit early. We found out about it. And we have all the cards. We have every single one. We don't want to do anything bad, but they have, economically, we have such power over Canada. I'd rather not use it, but they did something with our tech companies today trying to copy Europe. They copied Europe. It's not going to work out well for Europe either, and it's not going to work out well for Canada. They were foolish to do it. And so I said, we're going to stop all negotiations with Canada right now until they straighten out their act. We have all the cards. We have all the cards. We do a lot of business with Canada, but relatively little. They do most of their businesses with us. And when you have that circumstance, you treat people better. They've had farmers that are getting like 300, 400, 200% in tariffs. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We have cases, you don't read this and the people don't report, but they charge us 400% on some dairy products. 400%. Nobody writes that. It's not fair to our farmers, and we've got to protect our farmers.
And over the weekend, Prime Minister Carney told reporters he hadn't spoken to the president the day he announced the freeze on trade talks. According to his official itinerary, Mr. Carney had been chairing a meeting on Canada-U.S. relations just moments before Mr. Trump lashed out.
Hi, Prime Minister.
Mr. Carney, have you spoken to the president today yet, sir?
No, I didn't speak to the president today.
Any reaction to the news he put on Truth Social today?
We'll continue to conduct these complex negotiations in the best interests of Canadians. It's a negotiation. Ça va continuer.
Will you back down from the deal?
This morning, the White House confirmed that it will restart trade talks with Canada, and Canada is still aiming for a deal by July 21st. Joining me now to discuss more is our correspondent, David Clement from the Consumer Choice Center.
David, thank you for the time today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what was your reaction to the news last night that Canada was dropping the digital services tax?
Well, it was great news for Canadians who use the products that these tech companies provide, because it was almost guaranteed that the cost was going to be passed down to consumers, regardless of what outlet what platform you're talking about. But if I use Netflix for an example, if they're going to be hit with a retroactive bill based on their Canadian revenue, it's almost guaranteed that they would have ended up passing those costs on to consumers through higher subscription fees, or limiting the content that's in Netflix in terms of what they're paying and what Canadians can access. So from that point of view, it was fantastic, because it was ultimately going to be a tax increase on Canadians, and a tax increase on Canadians on a lot of the things that Canadians really enjoy using. Netflix, Airbnb, Meta platforms, Amazon Prime, you name it. And so from a kind of domestic consumer perspective, it's a big win, because that tax burden would have ultimately ended up being paid for by Canadians.
And what do you make of the concession coming after Trump pushed back on the digital services tax, especially after Ottawa had defended it last week?
It is strange. It's very strange that up until the end of last week, there were members of Liberal caucus defending the move, telling the press that they weren't going to backtrack on it. It's strange because it's something that people on the advocacy side, the Conservatives, other third parties have kind of long argued against. It's important to remember the historical context here is that the OECD had generally understood that they wanted to figure out a way to create a tax regime for these online platforms, because the tax code in most instances is written for a time when the internet didn't exist. Trade policy was usually written for goods and not for virtual services and things like that. So there's a lot of catch up. But the OECD, when they met, basically wanted to punt a decision on this down the road and basically have a wait and see. And Canada decided to chart its own course and go ahead with it anyway. And then go ahead with it anyway, even though the previous administration, the Biden administration, has said, hey, guys, knock it off. Now the Trump administration rather forcefully said, hey, guys, knock it off. So it just seems really strange that the previous Liberal government and even this current one used so much political capital on a policy ultimately to withdraw it on the Sunday of Canada Day weekend in advance of more trade talks.
Now, does backtracking on this tax make Canada look weak? I mean, Donald Trump basically said, get rid of this tax, and within a few days, Canada got rid of it. Does it show that Canada's not really standing their ground a bit in this trade war?
So it's important here to separate what's good for Canada and then the optics. Mm-hmm. So it is good for Canada that we've shelved this tax. It's good for Canadian consumers. Optics-wise, it's a tough sell because you remember, Carney, the whole elbows up mantra. The Liberals frame themselves really as like, we're the ones who are the best equipped to fight Donald Trump on this head on. We're going to hit him where it hurts. Hoorah. Kind of wrap the Canadian flag around this trade war. The way in which it looks now is Trump said jump, and ultimately Ottawa said how high, and then jumped that high. That doesn't undermine the policy, but it does make them look weak. It also creates a dynamic that's really uncomfortable because what did Canada get in return for this policy reversal? Well, all we got was continuing to talk. It's not like it was a real negotiation where we said, okay, we're going to give this up and we want you to wiggle on softwood lumber or some other trade issue that Canada may have with the United States. And so it's left a lot of people, a lot of the commentary class wondering, like, well, what did we get in return for this? And right now, that's, a looming question because we'll see what happens in the lead up to the July 21st deadline. If we can get a deal done, and this is part of the reason why we can get a good deal, then it's great. If we don't get a deal done, then it does kind of look like Ottawa is just responding to Trump's commands as they come.
And what do you make of the argument that the U.S. tech companies aren't paying their fair share?
This one is hard because they already, so if I got to use Netflix as an example, they already charge HST when you have a subscription. Mm-hmm. They already pay into Canadian content. There's some debate over the CRTC 5% fee and things like that. So they're already paying. If they have a corporate headquarters in Canada, they have staff, they're paying payroll taxes, their staff are paying income taxes. So the question about what is fair share, it always has left me leaving me scratching my head because that is said, but then nobody really defends what exactly the appropriate tax rate is. But that was part of the reason why the OECD met and wanted to wait a bit to figure out some sort of global response. But what I would say is that if Canada wants to have a business-friendly environment, they have to copy what Ireland has done. They had a budget crisis, and then it became a very low-tax, attractive jurisdiction for these tech companies, which is why the biggest tech companies in the world, their European headquarters are in Ireland. Rather than trying to pull tax money out of these tech companies, we probably should be in a scenario where we're trying to attract them to actually do more business here, hire more staff here, have more formal operations here.
Now, David, we do have about a minute left, but do tech giants have more power over global policy than some governments?
It's possible. In the context of Donald Trump, it's very interesting because tech was largely on his side in the election, and this would have been something that they would have been aggressively lobbying for. Again, that whatever somebody may think of those dynamics doesn't undermine the fact that it's good that we got rid of this policy. But there are some domestic U.S. politics at play here, and what that is you have the relationship between tech and the Trump administration as being a relatively positive one. And we've seen executives from the various companies in response, say, okay, this is a great move. Thank you for the administration for putting your foot down on this. Let's kind of move forward. Now, where we go from here is still a looming question, as I already mentioned, because there are other grievances as well. Supply management. There are a bunch of other major policies that the Trump administration has complained about. Is that what we see get flushed out in the coming weeks before July 21st? I'm not sure.
Well, David, thanks for breaking that down for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.